From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Early on Sunday, the president of Venezuela's opposition-controlled National Assembly, Juan Guaido, was detained by members of the Bolivarian Intelligence Service who were acting off their own account. Soon after, he was released, and those behind the illegal detention were dismissed from the force. The country's Minister of Communication, Jorge Rodriguez, gave a statement explaining the situation.
We found out about an irregular situation in which a group of state officials acted unilaterally against Representative Juan Guaido. The issue has been solved. It only served to create the usual media show and the setup of false positives. Those state officials who took part in this circus that endangered the everyday life of citizens have already been dismissed from the force. They are currently being disciplined in the most strict manner. We will find out the real story behind this act.
And news coming in, the communication minister has named Ildemaro José Rodríguez Mucura as the person allegedly behind the illegal detention of Guaido. Rodriguez announced the name in a tweet and also said the man is linked to the country's far-right opposition. He's currently being questioned for his involvement. And following the illegal detention of opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza issued a statement condemning what he called the ongoing coup attempts of a supremacist elite controlled by the White House. Correspondent in Caracas, Madeline Garcia, brings us more.
An unusual incident took place in Caracas on Sunday. Opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido, who was recently named the president of the country's National Assembly, was traveling in a car on the Caracas-La Juaria highway to a rally in his hometown when he was traced and detained by Bolivarian Intelligence Service agents. Vice President of Communication Jorge Rodriguez has said that as soon as reactions started to spread across social media from the right-wing opposition, authorities started to investigate the incident and found that this group of intelligence agents acted of their own accord in detaining the lawmaker. The situation was quickly brought under control and Guaido was released. The officers in question were instantly dismissed. A strict disciplinary investigation is going on to find out the motives behind their action and whether they were acting in collusion with the opposition. We must add that this event happened just a day before President Maduro is expected to go to the National Constituent Assembly to present his new economic measures as well as his plan of action for the next 6 years.
In other news from Venezuela, on Saturday, President Nicolás Maduro held a news conference with the regional representatives of the United Nations. The main topic discussed was the efforts of the Bolivarian government to achieve the goals of the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Maduro also spoke about the need to re-establish talks with the opposition in order to achieve said goals.
Que nuestro país sepa.
Let all people know that Venezuela has fully accepted the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This means that the goals set by the UN as a global initiative will be part of our government agenda. I'd like to talk about these goals with the opposition, to have a long talk about social, political, economic issues, the topics that concern the opposition, as well as of the concerns of citizens. I want our conflicts to end. There are useless diatribes that lead nowhere, that are trying to escalate the conflict in Venezuela. We must put an end to them and promote dialogue. We must promote respect. And I hope that the United Nations can help us re-establish talks, even in private at first. I hope they help us establish a national dialogue for peace.
This week, 10 out of 12 countries that underwrote part of a declaration by the so-called Lima group of countries attacking Venezuela's sovereignty have backtracked their support for it. Let's find out more.
Peace and democracy triumph in Venezuela. That is what Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza said during a news conference, a stage where he used to clarify the anti-meddling stance of the country.
Es importante decir que It is important to highlight that to err is human, but it is wise to right our wrongs. And we believe that diplomacy in the region has won out and international law is being respected. Despite our differences and the ongoing attacks against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and its government, politicians have chosen the right path.
Arreaza recalled that the Bolivarian government delivered 11 official complaint letters to the countries that underwrote paragraph 9 of a statement by the so-called Lima group.
Our complaints were delivered to all governments of the Lima cartel, demanding that they rectify their position towards Venezuela. Within 48 hours, or our government would have been forced to take the most urgent diplomatic actions in defense of our integrity, sovereignty, and dignity.
The political climate has been marked by threats from the United States in the days prior to the presidential swearing-in ceremony for Nicolás Maduro. But international and local support was also present.
Issues in Venezuela are resolved in Venezuela by us, citizens, and we are proof of that. We are here showing the popular force of the people, showing that our president is ratified once more.
A new deadline has been given until Monday for the government of Paraguay and Canada to rectify their positions in favor of international law. The Bolivarian government has assured they will defend self-determination to the end.
Cesare Battisti, a former Italian left-wing activist, has been arrested after an Interpol squad tracked him down in Bolivia. He is now being extradited to Italy to face murder charges. Battisti, a former member of the Armed Proletariats for Communism, is wanted for 4 alleged murders during the 1970s. He has denied responsibility for any of the deaths. He was granted refugee status in Brazil by then-President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, which was later revoked by former President Michel Temer. Brazil's new far-right President Jair Bolsonaro reacted after the arrest, pledging to cleanse Brazil of left-wing and communist ideology. Italian Interior Minister Matteo Salvini said he is proud of the arrest of the former left-wing activist.
I am proud to wear the jubilee given to me by the men of the state police, because tonight those men arrested Battisti, and therefore it's the least I can do.
An assassination attempt against Brazilian Labour Party lawmaker Marta Rocha took place in Rio de Janeiro. Local reports say that an unidentified vehicle blocked Rocha's car, and at least 4 hitmen exit the vehicle, opening fire on Rocha's car in the historic Peña neighborhood. Political violence has been ramping up since last March, when Rio's municipal council member Marielle Franco was murdered in the city. Residents of the state of Ceará in Brazil are still living at the mercy of gangs that have unleashed a wave of violence throughout the state. The violence has been ongoing for 10 days now, despite the deployment of hundreds of security forces and the arrest of over 300 people. Citizens have been greatly affected as they face bombings, the burning of vehicles, and attacks against federal buildings. The crisis started after the government of Ceará announced measures to control the state's defective prison system.
We do not know who to trust. We have no guarantee of safety, so it's really difficult to go out on the street.
There are buses that we cannot take. We never know if we can go home. Some buses are much further away. It's total insecurity. It's gotten so complicated, we're at the mercy of the bandits.
Extractivist activities in the Brazilian rainforest have been ongoing since the era of colonization. They have greatly impacted the region's ecosystem and the lives of the Patacho indigenous community, who live in these lands for hundreds of years. In the third part of our series, The Patacho Where Resistance Was Born, we take a look at the toll extractivism has taken on ancestral lands.
Here is where a multinational logging company used to operate. The Bralanda was condemned by the Patacho indigenous community for the destruction of a big part of the flora and fauna in the region, and for the persecution against this ancestral people.
They signed a contract for these lands, destroyed every species of birds and other animals that lived in what used to be a complex and rich ecosystem. They chopped everything down. They even tore apart families that lived there with the help of the police.
The Patasho people stated that deforestation only worsened with evictions and violence against indigenous communities, as well as the selling of lands at very low prices. The activities of these logging companies continued until the end of the 90s. Experts point that Bralanda destroyed nearly 40,000 hectares.
All these companies export wood. They chopped everything with no control. Everything they saw as fine wood, they chopped it down. And after the forest was completely destroyed, they didn't want to stay there. And what they did was pass the lands on to the government to make a national park.
Part of what remained from the forest is now the National Park of Discovery, created in 1999. Today, management of the park is shared with indigenous leaders. Deforestation also opened a path for other activities.
Eucalyptus, coffee, papaya, they have many different crops and a variety of products that are affecting our rivers, which are drying up.
Agrotoxic residues of monoculture contaminate rivers. This, on top of the consequences of cattle farming and the land erosion caused by eucalyptus crops, are leading to the destruction of ancestral land.
There used to be a very old cemetery here, where the bodies of our ancestors laid. But the men came and killed our forest, so it became a field of grass. They violated our history, our memory, the dignity of our people.
Destruction like this must be prevented by the state, which has never been able to protect the lands of the people that have resisted for over 500 years.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has spoken about the difficulties caused by the shortages of fuel that some states are going through. Despite that, he added that the government will not give up on its fight against fuel theft and smuggling, thanking people for their support and asking them to avoid amassing fuel in fear of shortages.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, from the bottom of my heart, for supporting us in our fight against fuel theft. The so-called huachicol is illegal, immoral, and an act of corruption that we are dealing with. It's causing a lot of trouble because there will be a temporary disruption in the distribution of fuel. We have enough gasoline and diesel reserves for the country. It's just a matter of changing the distribution system and taking control of pipelines.
These days, filling up the gas tank has become an odyssey for millions of drivers in central Mexico. Certain parts of the population have been affected the most. Oscar Fuentes is a taxi driver. The lack of fuel has greatly impacted his work.
We cannot work. We are on the move all day with only 10 or 20 liters, which is what they allow us to sell. It's not enough for our working day.
Despite these problems, citizens support the strategy against fuel theft undertaken by the government.
In the medium and long term, it's something that will benefit us all, because fuel will be replenished in Mexico City and throughout the country. Prices as well as theft and corruption will be kept in check. It's even possible that the price of gasoline could go down.
According to official figures, during 2018, the theft of fuel, or huachicoleo as it is known in Mexico, caused losses of up to $3 billion to a state oil company, Pemex.
This is an open secret because refinery staff and federal staff are colluding with the thieves.
Opposition groups have criticized the plan of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who defended the results of measures adopted on December 28th.
They used to steal fuel from about 800 pipelines daily. With this plan, we have lowered that figure to 100 pipelines. That is 700 less, so we estimate we have saved $156 million.
The president reported that 1,600 kilometers of pipelines are already under the watch of federal forces to avoid theft and sabotage.
Mounted police have made a return to the streets of Mexico City. The squad is made up of 30 police officers and their horses. They were not only maintain law and order, but also serve as a tourist attraction. The group is called the Charro Police, and their uniform resembles the traditional Mexican charros, a term with a long history that is now used to describe horsemen in colorful outfits. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Thousands of Guatemalans have protested against President Jimmy Morales' decision to shut down a United Nations anti-graft mission in the country. Last week, Morales notified the UN that the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala will close early, but the country's constitutional court ordered the government to tell public workers they must continue to cooperate with the commission. The UN body came under fire from Morales after it sought to investigate him on suspicion of campaign finance violations.
We want to tell the world that Guatemala is living through a crisis generated by the government of Jimmy Morales, by the financial elite and by the military.
People are tired of this. People want to see a government that works for them, that gives them solutions, and does not use security forces to intimidate us and to seek impunity.
A severe storm and heavy rains in northern Argentina have led to flooding of vast agricultural land and towns. According to local reports, over 300,000 hectares have been flooded in the provinces of Santa Fe, Chaco, and Santiago del Estero. Water in the area has risen past 1.5 meters in height. Hundreds of residents have been evacuated from the region. Over the last few months, the region has seen above average rains, leading to heavy losses in cotton, rice, and other crops.
I had to come from my home because I can no longer be there. It rained so much, and I had to come to my mother's home. We are in a terrible state. You can't live like this. And the kids, look at how they're sleeping. I had to bring them here because of the disaster. I lost all my things. It's chaotic to live like this.
This week saw the 61st anniversary of the death of the Chilean poet Gabriela Mistral. At a time when women's voices were often silenced, she was largely ignored in Chile, until she became the first Latin American writer to win a Nobel Prize in Literature.
This is an important date, but its commemoration is still unnotified. Chile had to wait until the world recognized the work of its poet Gabriela Mistral before she could receive the most prestigious literary award in Chile.
Chile ignored her and criticized her. Then she won the Nobel Prize, and after that they couldn't ignore her anymore.
Meciendo mi carne, meciendo mi hijo, voy moliendo el mundo con mis pulsos vivos.
Gabriela Mistral faced a conservative, male-dominated world and dared to break the barriers that keep women, indigenous people, and the poor ignorant.
Educating a woman means giving her dignity, opening up more opportunities for her future, lifting her out of degradation. It is important that women stop needing protection and can live without sacrificing their happiness.
Y pueda vivir sin que tenga que sacrificar su felicidad.
Her real name was Lucila Godoy Alcayaga. She was born in a small town in the north of the country. When she was little, she worked at the local rural school, and at 13, she wrote her first poem. 2 years later, she began to study to become a teacher. She also contributed to local papers and became a feminist.
She was a citizen of the world. She was deeply interested in the continent's political life and its economy. She had opinions about everything. By the middle of the 20th century, she was one of the most important intellectuals in Latin America.
She went to Mexico in the middle of its revolution and took part in its educational reform. She was opposed to dictatorship and any type of oppression. She came to know love alongside her partner Doris Dana. Do you think that the story of Gabriela Mistral has been silenced?
Yes, especially in relation to her sexual orientation. The official version is that she wasn't a lesbian, but everyone knows she was. That is very present in her work, but that aspect of her was silenced.
She was never recognized like Pablo Neruda, but her work touched the people. Thousands of them lined up to say their last goodbyes.
She was so present in Chileans' lives because she touched on the real problems the country had, and those problems still remain today, more than 60 years after her death. To understand Chile, we have to understand Gabriela Mistral.
Because Gabriela Mistral, the poet, came out of the people. She was one of them.
Thousands of people in Senegal have demonstrated against a new electoral law. The new law requires presidential candidates to be endorsed by at least 1% of the electorate nationwide to be eligible to stand for election. Opposition members have accused the government of suspiciously applying the law in order to disqualify opposition candidates.
Especially the endorsements by voters. We don't even understand it. Nobody knows what is happening. So we say no. We can't let that slide.
The runner-up for the presidential elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo has filed a complaint in the country's constitutional court asking for a recount of the votes. Martin Fayulu claims he won the elections and has asked for a manual recount to confirm this. The court now has 8 days to rule on the complaint. On Friday, the DRC's Electoral Commission declared Felix Tshisekedi as the country's new president.
What I demand is that, since the Senate has fabricated the results, you have seen it. The Senate has fabricated the results in order to be sure of the action by the Congolese people, meaning the taking of a ballot and putting it into a ballot box, and of the truth of that action, we must simply recount the votes.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of Palestinians have marched in Gaza City in support of the newly founded Palestinian Democratic Rally. Their aim is to end the division between Gaza and the West Bank. The protesters condemned the Israeli occupation and demanded the unification of the Palestinian people around the national cause. A similar protest was also held in the West Bank.
This is the beginning of the events organized by the Democratic Gathering, which happened in Gaza and the West Bank simultaneously. There is an integrated program that will implement steps on the ground in order to deal with repercussion of this division and correct the compass of the Palestinian national struggle. We would like to focus our fight on the occupation instead of conflict between Palestinians.
Now let's take a look at some other stories from around the globe.
3 German skiers have been killed and a 4th remains missing after an avalanche hit near the Austrian ski resort of Lechmalberg. Due to high risk of further avalanches, the rescue of the missing skier has been postponed. Heavy snow has hit the Austrian Alps in the past week, raising avalanche warning levels and cutting off local roads. Thousands of Serbians have protested in Belgrade against President Aleksandar Vučić and his party. Protesters are demanding media freedom and an end to attacks on opposition leaders. They also have accused the president of preparing a secret treaty with Kosovo, a key precondition for Serbia to join European Union. This is the 6th such protest against Vučić.
It can't go on like this. This is the only civic, elegant way of showing discontent. We signed out of social networks, out of all of our various chats, and walked out into the streets.
Thousands of people have participated in support of the Luxembourg-Liebknecht demonstration in Berlin, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the execution of socialist leaders Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht. The duo were shot dead on January 5, 1999 by German Freikorps soldiers in Berlin.
And with this, we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.